Hello, beautiful souls. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. I hope this finds you on a very lovely and bright day. My name is Dante Starshine, and in this video I want to talk about the active and the passive components of self-love. And this is something that has also been transmitted through the Pleiadian Council, who I channel. And it's sort of a refinement, as I find that a lot of people can practice one side of self-love but not the other. And so if we see it in the sense that self-love is really doing the things that are the most loving for ourselves, and on the flip side, it's also being totally able to accept everything about ourselves just as we are. So it's almost a paradox in that self-love is about change. We have to transform ourselves. We have to change our patterns. We have to change the way we behave. And we have to change our beliefs. That's probably the most important step, because if we don't change our beliefs and we try to do something in our lives, and we don't believe in our worthiness or believe in our deserving, then the energy won't be there to support us in creating what we're intending to create. And at the same time that we are changing ourselves, we are also fully accepting exactly where we're at, fully accepting everything about ourselves. So the paradox is that in order to actually generate a great change, you have to be okay with perhaps never changing at all. And that state of full acceptance opens you to allow that transformation to occur in much more natural and easy ways. So the active component of self-love is what a lot of people refer to as self-care, for one. But beyond self-care, it's about creating a life that you really enjoy. So the channeled beings, if you don't know my work that well yet, I am a channel. So I work with the Pleiadian Council, and I've studied the work of many other channeled beings. And all of them say that we have to fully follow our heart's greatest passion. We have to do things that ignite this joy in us. Bashar, one of my favorite teachers, says, follow your highest excitement to the best of your ability with no insistence on a particular outcome. And that formula is enough to manifest anything and to raise your vibration in the clearest, most powerful way. So this is the active component. And sometimes people really have perhaps a good concept of themselves, that they see themselves as very hardworking, but they're hardworking in all the wrong ways. They may spend a lot of time at their work, a lot of time in service to others, yet they're not enjoying what they're doing. They're not in a deep way just taking in and loving every bit of it. So to follow your highest excitement, you both have to do what you love, and you have to do it in a way that you love doing it. So in order to really tap fully into this active component of self-love, from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed, everything that is not absolutely mandatory for our survival and has to be something that makes us feel really good. 100% of it. Of course, we may not like washing the dishes fully, but even in those little, I actually like washing the dishes, but I know a lot of people don't. Even in those activities that may not fill you with the greatest joy, there's a way that you can refine the way you do it. If it's humming as you do it, if it's singing to yourself as you do it, if it's chanting mantras as you do it, if it's turning on a video or something to keep you in a joyful state as you go about doing it. A shift in attitude. That's perhaps going more into what I'll describe as the passive side of self-love. But you have to love everything you're doing fully. in the moments that you're like, oh, okay, I'm done with work now and I'm gonna rest and restore? Or do you really love what you're doing in those times? Do you choose out of everything you could look at and focus your attention on as you're at a more restful state, that thing that opens and expands your heart the most? So this is so important. Those moments that we spend distracting ourselves or using vices or something that is a lesser excitement that kind of takes away the relief, takes away the stress and gives us relief, will never let us fully tap into that flow of joy and love fully. And there can be a lot of resistance and fear around really stepping into authentically choosing what you love to do the most. And it's so important to be able to have that energy of courage that even though I'm nervous about doing this, I'm going to take that step forward anyway. Even though I'm nervous about putting myself out into the world in this clear way, I'm going to do it anyway. And every time you shed a layer. So in order to really step into self-love, you have to be open to trial and error. You have to be open that sometimes when I embark on this journey and I start moving in the direction of what I feel love and passion for, I make a mistake. And it's important to change your definitions about mistakes, that mistakes are the ways that you learn lessons. And a certain degree of lessons are required in order for you to know and be aware of everything you need to know and be aware of, in order to really create and manifest your ideal life and your ideal relationships. So another part of this is, if there's something in your life like a job that maybe you don't love fully, or relationships that aren't fully satisfying you, but they're meeting your needs, you have to create a vision for yourself of how you're going to bit by bit phase out of that current experience into a new one. And that may be scary. And that's why we can use many different techniques like hypnotherapy or some sort of process of that nature that allows us to get in contact with future versions of ourselves that have already created the life that we imagine for ourselves. And we witness that future probability that, if we see it from a quantum perspective, already exists out there. And we take it step by step back to this very moment. And we see every step that has brought us from where we are now and where we're going. We can also ask that future version of ourselves for tips and hints and take that in and know that our subconscious mind, when we tap into these altered states, has a higher knowing that the conscious mind can't always make sense of. But if we take in that information and receive it, it leaves an impression that can help us start to transition into a life that we prefer more. So we really have to be living our joy 100% of the time. And that will automatically just fill us with love and joy for our lives. And sometimes those things that bring us joy also challenge us. And it's having that really positive attitude towards growth, that sometimes we move through those growing discomforts. I don't want to call them pains, because I don't believe in that old strategy of no pain, no gain. I think that when we put ourselves through pain, and we have the no pain, no gain attitude, we really set ourselves up to get accustomed to that pain and consider it normal. And we have to denormalize our pain and look at every little thing we're feeling and, question, why is that there? And what would my experience be like without it? How do I move from this experience now of having this pain and feeling this lack to generating a more easeful and joyful experience? So for this active side of self-love, we really have to, in a way, start to automatically say yes to that core vibration in our heart. And this is not that complicated. It does bring you through some challenging moments when fear arises, because we've been conditioned to not listen to our hearts. But the more that we just make the feeling state top priority, and we listen to our heart when we are given choices, and we have choices all the time, from the smallest choices to the biggest choices. And the smallest choices are great opportunities to start to practice this, because in those moments, it's like we don't see the potential for great risk, but we can see huge positive results come when we don't think from up here, but feel from in here. What are we really drawn to? And when we feel that as a sensation of warmth and opening and even goosebumps and, oh, something's happening here, and we move in that direction, something powerful always opens up. And it puts into motion this powerful force of synchronicity. And I've been practicing this for many years now. So I've been practicing this for 5 or 6 years, and I noticed that those smallest decisions are sometimes the most important. That when I, throw away the sense of what is most productive, which is something that maybe is a more conventional approach to self-love, but listen to what is truest in my heart right now. That's when I meet people and run into situations that manifest huge changes in my life. The smallest moments, like I walk down a certain street, or I just go out into the park for the sake of it. I meet a person at that moment that then changes my whole trajectory. And it's simply because my feeling of being drawn to something, my higher self knew that if I did that, I would meet that person. And so the feeling of love that channeled through me, what drew me in the direction of manifesting that. And so it really is, in the sense, just as simple as coming to listen to your heart again and again and again. So the passive component of self-love is equally important. And again, what I tend to notice is that people who are very good at one side may not be that good at the other. So there's people who are so passionate and they fill their life with all of these different activities, and especially spiritual activities. There's a lot of spiritual seekers that are so switched on, yet still have these self-worth issues. And self-worth issues and value judgments, comparison, is all the stuff that needs to be worked out when we look at this more passive component of self-love. So we have to see ourselves as a lovable being. And this is the part where we just, look in the mirror, and every time we see ourselves, we just hold our heart and say, I love you. Even if we're just passing, we're like, oh, I love you. When we open up our social media, look at that person. They're so great. I love you. And shower ourselves with love. Get used to the idea of being showered with love. And when we have needs, to honor them, to understand that everything that we are feeling is something that needs to be honored. It's not always something that needs to directly manifest in our lives, but we have to acknowledge that feeling. Our conditioning is to push away certain feelings and make them unvaluable, make them wrong. And even if we're having, emotional issues because we're struggling to feel we deserve something, or struggling to create something in our lives, sometimes what we are struggling for is not something we actually genuinely need. But we're never going to know until we honor that part of ourselves and just say, oh, I feel that you're wanting that, and I'm holding space with you there. So this passive component of self-love is really holding space for yourself. And another aspect of this is to completely drop your perceptions of good and bad for a moment, for all moments. To not see from such a limited standpoint, from such a moralistic lens. And this isn't to say celebrate people who are harming others in the world, But when we see that and we condemn people who are wrongdoers, quite literally, as other, then we are living in a dualistic model of reality where I'm the good guy and they're the bad guy. And as long as we live in a world where there's bad guys, we're trying to prove that we're not one of them. And so even if you are, so humble, generous, and giving, when you live in a world with bad guys, it's an effort to not become like those people. And the truth is that, in this spectrum of human consciousness, we contain the potential of everything. We contain the potential to be angelic manifestations, and we contain the potential to be demonic manifestations. So if we say, no, they're the demons, they're the bad ones, they're evil, and attempt to portray ourselves opposite that, we will never really be free. And one channel that I'm fond of to some extent. Sometimes I'm like, okay, whatever. Abraham. I like when Abraham talks about Esther, the being channeling Abraham, and says, well, Esther sometimes has thoughts about, really, really like what you would consider awful things. And I think that makes Abraham and Esther a really good pair, because it shows that you can be this spiritual being and you can also have these shadows. And people who struggle a lot in really actualizing themselves will often feel that they have to get to a certain point and be good enough and be clear enough, be well enough to some extent in order to create this life for themselves, in order to put their gifts out, in order to serve others. They have to be there first. But that never really works. Because, again, every time that you put yourself out there, you do encounter, even if you encounter success, you see some area where it could be better. And that's a lesson that allows you to do it better the next time. But without putting yourself out there, you have no evidence for your capability. And so until you actually try to move in the direction of, manifesting whatever your service or gifts to the world are, you're not going to have evidence for it. So you have to just go on a whim and do it. And you have to understand in your intrinsic worth. And so one thing that comes through many channels as well, maybe the wording here comes from Bashar, I don't know, but it's that if you were not innately worthy, you could not exist. Existence cannot create something that is unworthy. So this trap of unworthiness is the worst obstacle to self-love. And we have to be able to see every being as innately worthy of having all their needs met. And when we see this way, we start to see, the way we've constructed reality is a bit askewed. Not that people are askewed. Of course, we have shadows, but the way that we are living in this world is askewed. Yet I can set my framework up. I can set up my inner reality, and therefore my outer reality will match it, to put me in a place where I can allow all of my capability to shine, where I can allow all of my light to shine through, and from that create what I really need. So really, these two active and passive sides come together here, that when you passively accept, I love myself, I'm good as I am, I'm perfect as I am, I don't need to change myself in order to start changing this outer reality. Or I don't, yeah, I mean, of course we're working to change ourselves. Maybe that's not the right wording. I don't need to fix this. I don't need to fix what is wrong with me first in order to create changes in my life and in the outer world in the ways that I'm most excited about. When we allow that to manifest through us and we set ourselves up in that way, then these active and passive components of self-love really come together, and we can fully move in the direction of creating what we are intending to create and following our joy fully. So I hope that's helped you in tapping into your own greater sense of love and your own capability. And if this interests you, tune into the webinar, and I'll be talking about this again, more in depth, and answering questions. And yeah, I'm very excited and so looking forward to that. So again, thank you, and hope you're having a brilliant, beautiful, and blessed day. Much love and blessings.